This program is made possible through the financial support of Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations.
Thank you, Chris, for that very generous introduction. I'm appreciative of it, but much more importantly, I appreciate your ongoing contribution to the Commission for Higher Education and to the state of Indiana. As was mentioned, Chris is our current chair, but he's been a longstanding member of the Commission, and he makes the work that we do very much better. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for being here with us today. As Chris mentioned, I first met him 25 years ago when I began my service in the Indiana State Senate, and he was serving then as the president and CEO of the Indiana State Chamber of Commerce. Chris understood then what has become even more important in the intervening years, and that is that more than ever, Indiana's economy depends on education and human capital. And so we've had a chance to work with him. I've worked with him on K-12 reform, on everything related to workforce development, and his willingness to set really high expectations and to sometimes nudge Hoosiers to a place of being better and not just good enough has made the work that we do so much better as well. We owe him a continuing debt of gratitude for his service as a business leader and public servant. We also have in the audience current and former members of the Commission, and as they stand, would you please join me in thanking them for their service? Thank you to each of you. 2013 marks the State of Higher Education address. The first one we did was in 2013. As was mentioned, this is our 6th address. In each year, there's been a focus on higher education quality and value, and it's been central to our message. Certainly, that continues to be the case as we challenge ourselves to find better ways to deliver higher education value and meet its purpose for the state of Indiana. Its purpose as it relates to individuals, to employers, and to our state's economy. But what's especially important in 2018, 6 years since we started that first one? There are certainly many themes that we could explore, and we do: achievement gaps, workforce needs, costs and funding challenges, quality concerns, demographic shifts, and new higher education expectations and providers. Each of these and many others are important as we define higher education priorities. But this year, I've chosen to focus on an overriding theme that impacts all of them, and that theme is confidence in higher education and the paradox between a growing need for higher education and skepticism about its value. Is support for higher education waning? And if so, why? Have we oversold its value? Or is it more important than ever? Why do some Americans still believe in its mission and others challenge it? It is through this lens that we will consider the state of higher education in 2018. Recent surveys by Gallup and Pew have highlighted factors contributing to confidence levels in higher education. And you won't be surprised, people talk about soaring costs and debt, nagging questions about employment readiness and the graduation preparedness of our students, and a growing polarization based on demographics and political agendas. We can debate today whether perceptions align with reality, but it's clear that when only half of Americans have some or very little confidence in higher education, there is a problem. Let's unpack these 3 issues as we consider ways to increase the confidence in higher education, beginning with where it is most often questioned, and that is affordability and return on investment. Many will cite examples of individuals who were successful without higher education, and that can certainly be the case. But it's indisputable that on average, more education pays off, and some majors have a bigger payoff than others. Whether a certificate or degree, post-secondary education is associated with higher wages and greater job security. Over the past decade, those with higher education earned more on average and were less likely to be unemployed. In fact, Hoosiers with no college during the Great Recession filed 2/3 of all unemployment claims. While college degrees are valued, it's important for us to state right now that the term college is not limited to traditional degrees or institutions. Higher education includes industry certifications, certificates, and degrees that are delivered in multiple settings by an increasing array of education and training providers. We're talking education and training beyond high school. The unifying factor for all of these should be quality. In that spirit, ensuring quality while driving down costs, that I share both encouraging and concerning news. Many of us have heard stories of college graduates with crippling student debt. There are, in fact, 44 million Americans who owe nearly $1.5 trillion in student debt. Most of those who are struggling are in their 20s and 30s. For the vast majority of graduates, and notice I said graduates because completion matters, higher education is a wise investment, but it must be made wisely. And we can and must do more to ensure affordability and lower debt levels. On that front, Indiana is making progress. The level of debt for many Hoosiers is actually decreasing. Efforts by the Commission and our partners are helping students understand college costs and smart borrowing. Since 2012, the combined federal and private debt among IU and Purdue students has decreased by $165 million. Our colleges are creating more efficient and affordable ways for students to earn and transfer credit. The result, on-time graduation rates are getting better every year, saving time and money. In the past 5 years, there has been a 9% increase at four-year institutions and a 6% increase in two-year institutions on-time completion rates. And we know that saves students millions of dollars. While more needs to be done, we are finding solutions that work. Since 2009, the Commission for Higher Education has set targets for tuition and mandatory fees. Our goal has been to hold tuition steady or at no higher than an inflationary level, and the results have been significant, with some campuses freezing tuition and others abiding by those inflationary targets. For Indiana students, that means tuition increases have been the lowest in nearly 3 decades and among the lowest in the nation. The General Assembly has also worked to make college more affordable by investing in generous financial aid that is increasingly tied to requirements that we know will increase student success as well. Completion rates continue to improve as we convert our grant programs from entitlements to earned benefits. Based on legislation that was supported by the Commission and passed in the recent legislative session, we will now have requirements for 21st century scholars in both high school and college, requirements that will make them more likely to graduate from college and will smooth their transition into the workforce. Our Commission's latest return on investment report shows that state financial aid recipients contribute billions of additional dollars, at least $13 billion per graduating class, to Indiana's economy compared to high school graduates over the course of their lifetime. Are we beginning to see a bending of the cost curve? I believe the answer is yes. The cost escalation seen in recent years is not acceptable or sustainable. Pressure coming from consumers, policymakers, and employers to drive down costs is not going away. While higher education can assert, I think with some truth, that they were already working on many of these cost-saving measures, the truth is that external forces are continuing to drive many cost-saving measures, from administrative cost reductions to lower cost options from new providers, as well as streamlined degree programs from traditional colleges. At the Commission for Higher Education, we take seriously our responsibility to provide comprehensive and comparable financial information. What is the cost, level of debt, and wage premium for specific programs at individual campuses? Providing user-friendly data to those who will invest their time and resources is our goal. And we partner closely with our partners at the Department of Education and the Department of Workforce Development to ensure its reliability and usability. But even aside from the costs, many people are questioning whether higher education is necessary to get a good job, or that a degree actually equates to what is needed for the job. As Tony Carnevale from the Georgetown Center for Education and the Workforce has stated, the old rules of thumb no longer apply. Go to college, study hard, get good grades, get a job. These simple principles are no longer enough in today's complex world. What are students actually learning that prepares them for the job they will take? Brian Kaplan, an economist at George Mason University, joins the chorus of those who decry the need for education to secure a meaningful job. In his book entitled The Case Against Education, Why the Education System is a Waste of Time and Money, he states that for most students, higher education is an inefficient way to signal vague productive capacity to employers. While his perspective is provocative and maybe it includes some good points, it can't go unnoticed that a graduate of both the University of California and Princeton is using his education as an economist employed by a university, even while he advocates for educational austerity. More importantly, though, it's a risky proposition to dismiss the value of post-secondary education at a time when more jobs require it. Some may point to the college dropout who became a billionaire CEO and industry disruptor, but the data clearly show that these are the exceedingly rare expectations and not the rule of thumb in the 21st century economy. And it's more true than ever that income disparity is magnified for those who don't have post-secondary education or training, relegating them to lower-paying, non-skilled jobs, many of which are most at risk of elimination through automation and changing employer demands. As this technological shift occurs, and it is already, higher education will be more about lifelong learning to keep current or advance in a career. To help Hoosiers navigate these changes, it's a fair expectation that higher education should provide more intentional career planning, counseling, and work-based learning opportunities that will, in fact, lead to better jobs and lives. 80% of our colleges have actually changed the way they deliver career services in response to changing career demands. And those services need to be provided to older adults as well as 18 to 22-year-olds. Hoosiers who are returning to higher education to complete their degree or to get a high-demand workforce certificate need obstacles removed and a clear path from admission to career placement. A simple, student-friendly process is what we had in mind when we developed and rolled out Indiana's Workforce Ready grant for adults who lack a quality workforce credential. Since last August, thousands of Hoosiers have responded to this opportunity to earn a tuition-free certificate in one of our state's most high-demand certificates. Sheldon Spence is one of those adults who decided that this was the time to get the education he needed to get a better job. He lost his position after being a part-time crane operator for almost 8 years. At 41 years of age, it can be hard to start again, he said. Sheldon works in the evening and attends classes during the day at the Haas Training and Education Center in Lebanon. Thanks to the Workforce Ready grant, his tuition is free. He knew the 15 intense weeks to complete the CNC machining program would be required hard work and dedication to his studies. But he did it because he's dedicated to his kids and his future. He hopes to continue his education and complete the Mastercam certification program too. Travis Huddleston is a 30-year-old husband and father who was working at a dead-end job for a company that only had 3 skilled workers. Even though he was called on to train the workers who were hired for those positions, he couldn't get the job himself because he didn't have the correct credentials. In his words, "I wasn't going anywhere." But that changed when Travis learned about the Workforce Ready grant and got a fresh start. A few weeks ago, he started a part-time job with IBC Coating and Materials, and that position will lead to full-time employment when he completes his training. The company plans a $5 million expansion, and Travis will be working on F-16 and F-15 missile rails for fighter planes. Angel Howell is another great example. She was previously enrolled in college classes when her husband was severely injured and she had to take a job because he could not work. She took a job at Guardian Technology in Crawfordsville, a company, and this is the good news, it's happening more all the time, a company that supports her pursuit of more education by providing a flexible schedule. Angel is in class 40 hours a week and works 30 hours a week, using the Workforce Ready grant to pay for the certificate program. As she said, I knew it would be challenging, but I didn't want to be an operator for the rest of my career. Angel plans to complete the metrology certificate and then earn her degree in business through Vincennes' online program. These individual stories are just a small sample of larger, life-changing possibilities, and we need more Hoosiers like Sheldon and Travis and Angel to take advantage of this great opportunity for advancement. With the legislature's recent decision to expand the Workforce Ready grant to all high school graduates, Indiana now has a way for more Hoosiers to afford higher education. The Workforce Ready grant is just one example of how higher education can be more intentional in aligning what students learn with what they will do by working more closely with employers. Governor Holcomb's new Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning is an encouraging recognition of this need for both high school and college students to have meaningful work-based experiences that empower them to learn while they earn a paycheck. The goal is to double the number of participants in these type of earn and learn programs by 2020, helping more Hoosiers get good jobs now while preparing them for tomorrow's economy. Now let's tackle the most sensitive of these issues, divides in confidence and perception of higher education value based on geography, race, gender, and political affiliation. Let's consider first where people live. The truth is that the high school graduates least likely to go to college are from rural America. Fewer than 1 in 5 complete a college degree, and not surprisingly, rural families face lower wages and higher unemployment. It's not a matter of being less academically prepared. Rural students actually score higher on national assessments than the national average. But the legacy of having a good job without education beyond high school still marks many rural communities in Indiana and across our country. An article in the Wall Street Journal told the story of Katie Cronkite, who grew up in Kingman, Indiana. After graduating from high school a year early, she headed to Carnegie Mellon University, going to school with people who, in her words, seemed to have more money and more opportunities. Katie struggled at first, but discovered her talent in a technical writing program. Following graduation, she landed a job at Salesforce in San Francisco and worked to settle into her new West Coast life. Katie had often felt out of place back in Indiana, but these feelings persisted in California as well, where inclusiveness did not include small-town America. She posted a message on Facebook encouraging more civil dialogue between the coast and the middle of the country. This story is often seen on college campuses and contributes to the distrust many small-town and rural people feel for higher education. Katie may decide to come back to Indiana someday, but her journey has been made too hard, both in college and in her job. This is often true for people of color, too. The Commission's college readiness and completion reports tell a disturbing story that must be addressed for both economic and equity reasons. While some progress has been made toward greater equity between minority students and their peers, we're currently on track to only close that gap by 2/3 by 2025. A contributing factor in this gap is the notable difference in first to second year persistence rates for minority students. A comprehensive support system for at-risk students is needed to address the barriers to getting a degree or a credential. These gaps can be closed. Indiana's income-based 21st Century Scholars Program is having good results, with scholars attending and graduating at much higher level than their low-income peers who are not scholars. 76% of scholars go to college, beating out the state average of 65%. And scholars' completion rates are getting closer to the state average. You know, education has been known as the great equalizer. But in reality, studies now show that more than 2/3 of the growth and inequality can be attributed to disparities in college access and completion. It's clear that higher education outcomes look different based on race, background, and income levels. Confidence in higher education differs by gender, too. Unlike in years past, the majority of college students today are women. When asked, how much confidence do you have in higher education? A stark difference exists between men and women, with 62% of women saying they have confidence in higher education, and the number for men is at 50%. Let me be quick to say that neither number is strong enough when 99% of all new jobs that were created since the Great Recession require some sort of post-secondary education. The truth is that for large numbers of people, especially blue-collar men without any post-secondary education, there are limited options in the new economy. At the end of the day, the dividing line between the haves and the have-nots is increasingly distinguished by Hoosiers with higher levels of education and those who lack it. In recent months, much has been written about the partisan divides, and specifically, the negative view that many Republicans have toward colleges and universities, with more than a 20% gap between Republicans and Democrats' confidence in U.S. colleges. This has not always been the case. And it really does require a serious look at the underlying reasons why and what institutions can do to address the increased political polarization. Students enter college from a wide range of backgrounds and ideologies. Higher education should embrace open discussion and diverse perspectives. Regardless of their personal points of view, all students should be able to attain the necessary points of view that can allow them to analyze different points of view from theirs. And whether in high school or college, we need to prepare an educated citizenry that understands and defends our democratic principles. Without getting into an analysis of free speech issues or political agendas, it is important to embrace a more inclusive higher education culture that teaches critical thinking but not singular positions, that stands for education as the great equalizer rather than a source of income differentiation, that embraces the linkage between a quality education and a meaningful career by blurring the lines between the academic and applied, and one that prepares people for the shifts that will occur within the world of work. Building and restoring confidence in higher education is critical for our state's future. We cannot walk away from the higher education imperative, even as we work to increase its value. As we weigh these issues and remedies, it's also important to build support for higher education and workforce preparation in an integrated, aligned way rather than a siloed way. And that's why the new Governor's Workforce Cabinet was created, to provide a strategic focus on the alignment of education and training programs with employer needs and career opportunities. It's not a competition between higher education and workforce training. Rather, it should be about the complementary overlap between education and employment and relevant pathways that provide the best opportunities for more Hoosiers. In his State of the State address, Governor Holcomb spoke in compelling terms about the waste of human talent and loss of personal fulfillment that comes from not having a good job. And more than ever, that good job is tied directly to education beyond high school and lifelong learning. This is the mission and enduring value of higher education. And while there is much that we can do to build greater confidence in its value and return on investment, the good news is that in Indiana, we're making real progress to ensure better education pathways for the jobs of today and tomorrow. I close with an eye to the future based on a look to the past. 70 years ago, less than half of Americans had a high school diploma. Today, that number is nearly 9 out of 10. It required a shared commitment to change and higher learning. The same is true today. That means higher education must do a better job of expanding its reach and proving its value so that more of our citizens and communities benefit from its promise. At the Indiana Commission for Higher Education, we stand ready to partner with all Hoosiers to meet that challenge. Thank you.
This program is made possible through the financial support of Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations.